At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, there is a place where a human being would not survive a single second. Not because of the cold, not because of the darkness, because the pressure surrounding your body at that depth would be 1,000 times greater than anything you have ever felt in your life. The weight of the entire ocean above, pressing inward, with a force so absolute that no unprotected living thing has ever reached that depth and returned. Scientists once believed nothing could survive here. No sunlight, no warmth, no food, no conditions that life as we understand it has ever required. They were wrong. Something is living there. Not one creature, not one strange survivor, not one rare exception. An entire world, hidden beneath 11 kilometers of ocean, thriving in conditions that every rule of science said were impossible for life to exist. This place has a name, the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek god of the underworld. And what we found there changed everything we thought we knew about life on this planet. One machine, one mission. On March 26, 2012, ocean explorer James Cameron sat alone inside a 12-ton submersible called Deep Sea Challenger. The vehicle was the size of a torpedo, vertical, bright green, engineered to descend faster than any crewed vessel in history. He was about to attempt something only 2 people had ever done before him, back in 1960, for less than 20 minutes. He was going to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Imagine being inside that machine. The descent alone takes 2.5 hours. The first 200 meters, the sunlight above you thins, darkens, and disappears entirely. At 1,000 meters, complete darkness. The ocean has become a ceiling of black in every direction. No horizon, no reference point. Only the instruments counting down how deep you are falling. At 3,000 meters, the pressure outside the hull reaches 300 atmospheres. No military submarine in active service operates at this depth. At 6,000 meters, you cross the threshold. You have entered the Hadal Zone. The machine continues falling. 8,000 meters, 10,000 meters. At 10,908 meters, the deepest point any human had reached since 1960, the Deep Sea Challenger touched the floor of Challenger Deep. The lights came on. The viewport revealed the trench floor for the first time in over 50 years of human exploration, and what Cameron described when he surfaced was not the barren, empty wasteland that decades of scientific assumption had predicted. It was alive. The battlefield below, scientists who built the first unmanned Hadal landers had reasonable expectations. No sunlight, extreme pressure, near freezing temperatures. Almost no food drifting down from the world above. By every conventional rule of biology, the Hadal floor should have been nearly empty. Scientists expected silence. Instead, they found a battlefield. Within minutes of bait touching the trench floor, in some deployments, within seconds, cameras recorded movement, then more movement. Then a swarm so dense it blurred the frame completely. Amphipods. At the surface, amphipods are small, shrimp-like crustaceans, a few centimeters long. Unremarkable. Found in virtually every marine environment on Earth. Descend into the Hadal Zone, and something happens to them that biology still cannot fully explain. They grow enormous. Hadal amphipods have been recorded at 34 centimeters in length, nearly the size of a domestic cat. Moving through total darkness in swarms of thousands, competing, feeding, colliding, covering research bait within minutes of it touching the floor. Scientists call this deep-sea gigantism. In cold, high-pressure environments, where food is rare and unpredictable, larger organisms survive longer between meals. They outcompete smaller rivals for the same limited resources. They dominate. But size was not the most disturbing thing researchers found inside them. In 2017, a team analyzing amphipods collected from the deepest point in the Mariana Trench made a discovery that stopped the laboratory quiet. Inside these creatures, living 11 kilometers below the surface, in the most isolated environment on Earth, they found industrial chemicals, PCBs, PBDEs, pollutants, manufactured by humans. banned decades ago, at concentrations exceeding those found in organisms living in some of the most heavily polluted rivers in the world. These chemicals had traveled from the surface, absorbed into sinking organic particles, descended 11,000 meters through the water column, accumulated in the tissue of animals that have never once seen sunlight. The Hadal Zone is not separate from our world. It is downstream of everything we have ever done, and the amphipods were only the beginning. The fish that broke the record. In 2023, a research team from the University of Western Australia lowered a camera lander into the Izu Ogasawara Trench near Japan. They were not expecting to break a world record. At 8,336 meters below the ocean surface, deeper than any fish had ever been filmed alive, the camera captured a single organism moving slowly through the darkness. A snailfish, pale, translucent, almost gelatinous, moving without urgency through a world of crushing pressure and absolute darkness. The record it broke had stood for less than a decade. It will almost certainly be broken again. Imagine what it takes to survive at that depth. The pressure surrounding that fish, pressing against every cell in its body, exceeds 800 atmospheres. At the surface, that same force would compress every organ, destroy every protein, collapse every membrane within seconds. The snailfish carries a solution inside its cells, a chemical called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, a pressure stabilizer produced in concentrations that increase the deeper the fish lives. This compound shields proteins inside each cell from being crushed and deformed by the enormous weight of the ocean above. The deeper the fish lives, the more of it their bodies produce. Remove one of these fish from its environment and bring it toward the surface, and the decompression kills it before it reaches shallower water. These animals cannot survive in our world any more than we could survive in theirs. Their skulls are not fully fused, allowing bone to flex slightly under compression rather than shatter. Their cell membranes are built from unusual lipid compositions specifically tuned to remain fluid near freezing point, under pressures that would destroy the membrane of any surface organism instantly. And these are not rare animals barely surviving at the edge of existence. Where food concentrations exist on the Hadal floor, snailfish gather, competing, hunting, dominant in their world. They are apex predators, perfectly designed for a place that should not support vertebrate life. Their existence forces a question that researchers have not stopped asking since that footage came back. If evolution can produce a vertebrate perfectly adapted to 8,300 meters of crushing pressure and total darkness, what other rules have we written about life that are simply wrong? The sounds from the deep. In 2015, researchers lowered a hydrophone, an underwater microphone, into the Mariana Trench. They expected silence. What they recorded instead has never been fully explained. The deep ocean is not quiet. It carries the groaning of tectonic plates shifting beneath the seafloor. The low-frequency songs of whales passing thousands of meters above, the movement of currents through trench walls carved by geological forces older than most life on Earth. But among those sounds, researchers recorded patterns that did not match any known source. Low-frequency pulses, signals that repeated at irregular intervals. Acoustic patterns that traveled through the water column and faded before any instrument could fully capture their origin. Scientists are careful about what they claim. These signals have documented explanations: biological sources, geological movement, acoustic effects created by the trench geometry itself, reflecting and amplifying sound from distant origins. But the honest answer, the answer that every researcher in deep ocean science eventually gives, is simpler than any theory. We do not yet know everything that is producing sound in the Hadal Zone, because we have not yet seen everything that lives there, in an environment where 95% of identified trenches remain unvisited by scientific instruments, where every descent returns footage of organisms unknown to science. The unexplained sounds of the deep are not a mystery of the supernatural. They are a reminder of how much remains beyond our current reach. Life without a sun. Beneath the amphipods and the snailfish, beneath every visible organism on the Hadal floor, lies something that quietly dismantled one of the oldest assumptions in the history of science. All life requires sunlight. That belief held for most of recorded human history. Every ecosystem traced its energy back to photosynthesis. Every food web led back to a plant, which led back to the sun. The microbial communities of the Hadal Zone proved it wrong. Sealed inside the ancient sediments of deep ocean trenches, microorganisms draw energy not from sunlight, but from chemical reactions in the surrounding rock and sediment. They oxidize compounds, hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, iron, extracting electrons and using that energy to build biological mass in total and permanent darkness. No sun, no photosynthesis, no connection to the surface world above. Some of these microbial communities have been isolated inside Hadal sediment for millions of years. Researchers found them still active, still metabolizing, still alive, moving at a speed that the surface world would not recognize as life. Processing energy at rates measured not in seconds, but across geological time, but alive. Their existence does not only change what we understand about the Hadal Zone, it changes what we understand about where life can exist beyond Earth. If organisms can persist in total darkness, under crushing pressure, without sunlight, drawing energy from rock chemistry alone, then the definition of a habitable world is far larger than anything science had previously assumed. The frozen ocean beneath the ice shell of Europa, the subsurface of Mars, environments on worlds we have not yet reached, and conditions we have not yet imagined. The Hadal Zone does not just tell us about Earth, it tells us what to look for everywhere else. 95% unexplored here is the number that should stop you completely. Of the 46 identified Hadal trenches distributed across the world's oceans, fewer than a dozen have ever been visited by instruments capable of collecting biological samples. Fewer than 5 have received sustained scientific attention. The vast majority of the Hadal Zone has never been seen by human eyes or human technology. Every expedition that descends returns with species new to science. Every lander deployment captures footage of organisms never previously filmed. Every sediment core pulled from the trench floor expands what biology thought was possible. In 2020, a single scientific expedition to the Mariana Trench returned with over 100 species potentially new to science. From a single dive, we are not approaching the end of Hadal discovery. We are still reading the first page. New autonomous vehicles, capable of operating at full ocean depth, are beginning to change what is reachable. Environmental DNA sampling can now detect the presence of organisms from water column samples alone, without ever directly observing them. Pressure-resistant imaging systems are finally producing footage clear enough to study behavior, rather than simply confirm that something exists. What those systems will find in the 95% of Hadal environments we have never visited is entirely unknown. Something is living in those unexplored trenches right now, moving through the darkness, feeding, surviving, thriving in conditions we have not yet witnessed. We just have not seen it yet. We have launched telescopes that photograph galaxies billions of light years from Earth. We have landed machines on Mars, sent probes beyond the boundary of our solar system, produced detailed maps of the surfaces of distant moons with extraordinary precision, and the deepest places on our own planet remain largely beyond our reach. The Hadal Zone is not an empty trench. It is a living world, ancient, complex, interconnected, operating by rules that challenge every assumption we have ever made about where life begins and where it ends. Every snailfish, navigating 8,000 meters of darkness, represents millions of years of evolutionary solutions applied to problems we are only beginning to understand. Every microbial community, metabolizing in ancient sediment, sealed away from the surface for millions of years, is evidence that habitable space, on this planet and beyond it, is larger than any model we have ever built. The last unexplored frontier of our living planet is not somewhere distant. It is beneath the ocean surface, beneath the reach of light, beneath everything we have ever built or imagined. Because after everything we have explored above us, we are still discovering the world beneath us. And the biggest mystery on Earth is not what exists beyond the stars. It is what has been waiting in the dark all along.